10-year-olds Lisa Bishop and Chantel Walker are best friends, but last night a little fun became a medical emergency. The front wheel of the bicycle on which they were doubling dug into the sand and the pair were thrown to the ground. Part of the port rack on which Lisa had been sitting gouged into her knee, lodging behind the bone and pinning her to the bicycle. Paramedics administered painkillers, while the Nelson Bay Fire Brigade Rescue Squad used bolt cutters on the metal frame.
They told me everything what they were going to do and that I'll be all right.
Lisa was taken to the Nelson Bay Polyclinic where the spike still embedded in her leg was removed. Lisa's parents had nothing but praise for her rescuers.
We couldn't thank them enough. We've been down again this morning to thank them.
The Nelson Bay Ambulance Station has had one of its busiest holiday seasons, treating a variety of injuries.
We have a large influx of people, tourists coming up into the area. They're up here to have a good time, to enjoy themselves in a great location. And sometimes caution's put to the wind a little bit and it results in our turning out to their accidents.
For the remaining couple of weeks of holidays, officers urge visitors to take care.
The main thing is to have a good time, but just be wary of what you're doing. Alcohol certainly does cause a problem in many areas, and that's something we like to see people just keep a lid on and but still enjoy themselves. I mean, we live in a great part of the world. We're up here to enjoy it. Make sure that it's not spoilt by serious illness or injury during that time.
There was no rest for the Hunter team today after a comprehensive victory in the Institute of Sport pool in Canberra. The Hunter team won the girls, boys and overall point score. Leading the way, teenage Australian backstroke champion and male swimmer of the country titles, Matthew Rainey.
It just feels like winning Australian all over again, and cheer from the crowd was really good.
Rainey cut more than a second off the national record for the 14 years 200 metre backstroke, swimming 2 minutes 10.83. Also to feature in the titles, Tamworth's backstroke star Melanie O'Shea and butterfly champ Lismore's Ben Fisher. The swimmers are now concentrating on the state titles at the end of the month and the Olympic trials in April.
The full-throttle excitement of the National Formula One Championships remains a centrepiece of the Australia Day Newcastle Regatta. It's already predicted that last year's record crowd of 70,000 could exceed the 100,000 figure this year.
The Newcastle people, I think, are very, very lucky to have the venue that we have here in Newcastle. They can sit all around the foreshore and watch a very spectacular race.
The official launch of the 1992 Harbour Regatta by Newcastle Maritime Museum included organisers and guests who've helped put together a 3-day program of non-stop waterfront action. Among the celebrities, solo around-the-world yachtsman Don McIntyre. Don took second place in the 1991 BOC Challenge, setting a new Australian record. His yacht Buttercup carried Don through 55,000 gruelling kilometres of ocean that saw only 18 of 25 international starters cross the finish line. Don's adventures were recorded by a series of remote-controlled cameras which captured the yachtsman's nightmare, a 360-degree roll in the teeth of a gale. Don will sail Buttercup to Newcastle to give spectators a taste of maritime history in the making.
It was a personal Everest, I suppose, that I climbed, and it's a very special boat. It's a unique boat, it's an exciting boat, and we're really looking forward to bringing it down to Newcastle, or up to Newcastle, and showing all the locals.
Making a welcome return to the festival, the Royal Australian Navy, delayed last year by the Gulf War.
We've been able to provide HMAS Fremantle, which is a patrol boat, and HMAS Brunei, which is a heavy landing craft, and they'll both be open to the public between 1 and 4 p.m. throughout the weekend. And also this year we've been able to provide the clearance diving team too, which will put on a fairly spectacular display.
The The 3-day program promises something for everyone, from skydiving and water skiing to displays of dance and martial arts. Admission to the waterfront is free, but organisers are still confident of raising much-needed funds to help the Maritime Museum's ongoing work of preserving the history of the Port of Newcastle. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
How easily those bags full of Christmas cheer can become a nightmare. Consumer affairs officers around the nation have been inundated with inquiries about how to return Christmas gifts. But according to the experts, remembering a few simple points can take away the pain.
Well, if they purchase something which is defective, they are clearly entitled to a refund. But if they've made the wrong choice, or it's the wrong colour, the gift's unsuitable, then it's up to the store's policy.
Most larger retailers do have a refund if not satisfied policy, but that doesn't necessarily apply to smaller retailers.
Most of the small retailers will offer a credit note, and consumers are inquiring why they can't get a refund in those circumstances.
But there are still traps for consumers. Signs like these outlining refund policies appear legitimate but are misleading.
If they simply put up a sign which says no refund on sale items, for example, without qualification, that's misleading because, as I mentioned, consumers are entitled to a refund if the goods are defective.
The golf camp run by Tamworth professional Terry Hayes attracts budding golfers from across the region and even 2 keen players who've travelled from Dalby in Queensland. The camp caters for golfers of every stage, from beginners through to those who play regularly. Today they concentrated on putting and the intricacies of escaping from a sand trap, but will look at all aspects of the game during the camp. Junior golf in the north is a rapidly growing sport, something Terry Hayes attributes to the extensive coverage now given to professional tournaments and the fact that it's a relaxing game.
I think that golf's just a good way of relaxation, and I think that, an average round of golf you walk 10 or 11 kilometres. It's pretty boring walking around the streets.
Brad Edwards hails from Armidale and flies with a Lake Keep It Soaring Club west of Tamworth, piloting a 15-metre glider. At Uvalde in Texas, Brad endured 12 days of solid competition against the best flyers in the world and beat them all to be crowned world champion. The 15-metre division of gliding is considered the Formula One of the sport, making Brad's achievements all the more remarkable. And another fine athlete who knows what it's like to stand on the winner's dais is swimmer Chris Fiedler. From the Tweed Gold Coast region, Chris took all before him, making the national team for the World Championships in Perth and also to the Pan-Pacific titles in Canada. At the meet in Canada, Chris was second to legend Matt Biondi in the 100 metres freestyle, won silver in the 4x100 metres relay and a bronze in the 400 IM relay. But at the US Open Swimming Championships, Fiedler blitzed the field, winning the 100 metres freestyle, defeating everyone including Matt Biondi. And a reminder, the NBN St George telecast is live this Friday night at 9:30.
The Hunter's 4 Lifeline shops are more than just used clothing outlets. They're indicators of just how tough times are.
Prior to the recession, I'm going back probably 12 months or more, we'd be seeing, or I guess about 300 to 400 people a week would pass through our shops. At the moment, it's probably somewhere around 500 a week.
Ironically, while Australia is going through the worst recession in 60 years, the pile of donated clothes is growing ever higher. With 28 tonnes of garments and not enough storage space, Lifeline is cutting its prices in half.
We'd like to take the opportunity to, as you can see, move some of our stockpile of clothing and pass the benefits of that on to the public as far as cheap clothing is concerned.
As more hunter people are forced to tighten their belts, the type of Lifeline customer is changing.
A different type of person altogether is now shopping in used clothing shops. Middle class, upper class people are now shopping in used clothing shops.
The profits from the shops go towards the $200,000 annual operating costs for Lifeline's counselling services. Scott Bevan, NBN News.
Well, it's obviously got to be bad for Australia.
As long as they look after us, I mean, that's fine.
The 55,000 hectare Isis River catchment area has undergone one of the most extensive land management operations in the Hunter. In 1970, the area was identified as one of the worst in the region for land erosion. The clearing of trees for cattle, sheep and crops had laid the land to waste. Most of the coarse soil found its way into the Pages, then Hunter rivers, and finally added to silt deposits in Newcastle Harbour. Almost 20 years and $5 million later, the problem is being corrected. 400 kilometres of graded banks have been established, 400 farm dams dug and 40 kilometres of gullies filled. The land stabilisation program will continue with the replanting of trees by the 65 property owners in the area, assisted by low-interest loans. The work has been carried out by the Soil Conservation Service and the Hunter Catchment Management Trust.
Newcastle Knights chief Mike Armstrong spent the morning speaking with the league's lawyers over what the club should do.
You could look at it in the initial stages as some sort of a rather strong nail in the coffin.
The pay claim by the Players Association includes first-class air travel or $200 a day in lieu, superannuation of 12.5% to be paid by clubs, 4 weeks holiday pay and a $500 minimum payment per game. Added to that, a $100 hourly fee simply to train.
The training costs alone are something like $1.2 million, just on an average of 50 players per club, and most clubs have 60 players.
For a club like the Newcastle Knights, which is paying off a $2.3 million debt, it's a cost they can't carry, and at the very least would mean the end of under-21s and reserve grade. In a statement to NBN, Knights players spokesperson Mike Hagan said he believed some of the claims were over the top and outrageous. Writs have been sent to all 16 Winfield Cup clubs to appear before the New South Wales Industrial Commission tomorrow to begin discussions. As with most wage claims, it's expected the battle could take some months and even seasons before it's settled. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Maitland Golf Club has only just won its long battle against the drought, but now its members are fighting something far more insidious: vandalism. Over the past few weeks, the course has repeatedly been the target of vandals. In the latest attack, fairway trees have been torn down and 4 greens ripped up and deeply gouged.
So how deep was it? About 6 to 8 inches, I'd say, this section here. But the worst of it was the mapping and all that together, the jigsaw.
For the greenkeepers, the vandalism is heartbreaking with restoration expected to take 3 months.
Well, this would be the worst case of vandalism I've ever seen in the 3 years at Maitland Golf Club. The way they just hoed into the greens with rakes and flagpoles, I can't understand why they do something like this.
For golfers, the sight of the damaged greens makes them see red.
It's just sheer stupidity what they've done to the greens.
Oh, I think it's damn disgraceful, really.
The club has offered a reward and police have stepped up patrols to try and stop the vandalism, but to no avail. So now some frustrated members have taken the matter into their own hands.
Yeah, we're actually going to form like a vigilante squad and they're going to patrol the course from dusk till dawn, trying to actually catch the offenders.
Scott Bevan, NBN News.
Supporters of Wallsend Hospital packed their placards and tied slogans to their cars. This morning they left the picket line, which they've manned since the announcement of the hospital's closure, and drove to the entrance. They handed out leaflets and told people about the state of the Hunters' health system.
We want people of the entrance to vote for whoever is most likely to look after people and put people before money.
The situation is vastly different in the entrance. The population of the Central Coast is growing and the Greiner government has injected millions of dollars into new health facilities at Gosford and Wyong hospitals. Last week, the Central Coast Health Service advertised 900 jobs, created by the expansion of services. The supporters of Wallsend Hospital say they were given a mixed reception by voters in the entrance.
The bells were ringing in Tamworth last night as thousands of country music fans flocked into the town to be entertained for the next 11 days. The festival was declared open last night in front of a crowd of 3,000. By all accounts, attendances are up. With Tamworth bursting at the seams and with a new format, the festival should prove to be a winner.
Everybody wins because we are employing more artists at these shows. The fans will get to see more of them. In the past, it's been virtually closed to the fans. It's all open to the fans all of this time. And of course, Tamworth scores because it draws more people.
"11 days of toe-tapping and guitar twanging began last night as the 20th Tamworth Country Music Festival opened. More than 800 events and 5 open-air concerts are planned, with the Golden Guitar Awards now being announced throughout the festival, allowing maximum audience participation and enjoyment.
The object of racing, beat the bloke alongside of you, a bit difficult while you're on your roof. To super sedans, Bruce Gillen hooked up with Michael Hickey. Hickey nowhere to go, and his sedan was reduced to a crumpled mess. And in the major race of the weekend, the Australian Modified Championship, plenty of drama also. Alan Harris's last 2 trips to the Motordrome, disastrous. And Steve Hopping got a different view of the track. Defending champion Steve Robinson was out for the count on Friday night, blowing a motor, but a frantic overnight trip north and 16 hours labour had him at the grid for the start of the final. On the very first lap, he spun out and was sent to the rear of the field. But fate played a hand. Newcastle's John Brown blew a rear tyre challenging for the lead. Then Victorian Lloyd Hobson, who looked to have the race won, shattered a motor. Sydney's Tony Hopping assumed the lead. Then his chances went up in smoke, leaving Robinson out in front, and he cruised to victory. An emotional winner accepted the spoils of triumph and his second national title. Craig Parry is one of the most popular players on the international circuit and has had great success in Europe as well as Australia, although by his standards his form in the last couple of weeks has been ordinary. A native of Western Australia, Parry feels comfortable at Salamander Bay.
Very much like Western Australia, the way the golf course is set up, as we were saying earlier, the weather. In general, it's going to be a very good resort here.
Parry will carry the name and the good word of the Horizons Club Resort all around the world, while making several visits a year to Salamander Bay for holidays, clinics and the fine-tuning of his own game. Also, Craig will cast an eye over the layout and suggest any changes that may be needed.
You really have to design it with everyone in mind, and Graham Marsh and Ross Watson have, they're professionals and that's their job, and they've done great golf courses around the world.
And the golfer who has tamed some of the most difficult courses on circuits all around the globe has a tip or two for future members of Horizons.
I tell you what, they've got to hit it straight off the tee. That looks to be the order of the play at the moment. The rough's very thick, so don't hit it in there. So you need to hit it on the fairway and then hit it on the green.
After the general election last May and a protracted dispute in the courts over voting papers, the ALP still doesn't have one seat the party considers its own for the taking, Maitland. But flush with the entrance by-election win, Bob Carr walked Maitland's Heritage Mall this morning, explaining to all who shook his hand the ALP's game plan. In a Meet the People exercise, Mr Carr talked to some about the past and why ALP candidate Tony Keating didn't win the seat in May. To others, he talked about an uncertain future. The question of jobs was also high on the agenda when Mr Carr visited the National Textiles Mill at Rutherford. Managing Director Brian Smith blames the federal government's tariff reduction policy for the need to shed jobs. After the mill inspection, Mr Carr reaffirmed his opposition to his federal counterpart's policy. Scott Bevan, NBN News. Despite Australia's enviable international reputation for maintaining large aircraft, only 4% of the world's jets are serviced here. A company called Matrix Aeronautics hopes to boost the number of planes maintained in Australia by setting up a $100 million maintenance facility on 200 hectares of Crown land adjacent to the Williamtown RAAF base. Paul Lawson from Matrix says Williamtown was seen as an ideal site for the facility because of its proximity to Sydney's International Airport, the Hunters' sophisticated industrial structure and skilled workforce, and the presence of an aviation course at Newcastle University. In turn, what the development would offer the Hunter are 1,200 jobs when the facility is fully operational, a flow-on effect in work for Hunter Industries, and $160 million in annual export earnings after 3 years. Mr Lawson says last year alone, $40 million was spent with overseas companies to help maintain Australia's international carriers. He hopes with the Williamtown facility to not only bring back some of that money to Australia, but attract other international airlines as well. The proposal has already received federal support through the member for Shortland, Peter Morris, but the New South Wales Cabinet is yet to give its approval. Port Stephens Shire Council says it's yet to receive an application for the development, but President Bob Horne welcomes the opportunity to boost employment.
And anything that is going to employ young people and offer opportunities for young people to train in new industries obviously is pretty exciting.
Matrix Aeronautics hopes to begin construction of the facility at the end of this year, with operations beginning in 1994. Scott Bevan, NBN News.
Jim Sweeney's message to today's gathering was simple. The recession continues. At best it's in the homeward straight, but reaching the finish line is a hard climb. Economic recovery, he says, must initially come from the business sector.
Before you can get the public to confidently move forward, to spend money, to get consumption up, the people at the sharp end of the economy, so to speak, the businessmen, the small businessmen, have to show that confidence in the first place.
With well-established businesses closing their doors daily, Mr Sweeney realises his advice may be hard to swallow, but says through cooperation it can be achieved.
Well, they have to begin to do the things that they set up in business to do. Firstly, they can run off each other, particularly in a very tight-knit business community, say Toukley, the Central Coast, or even Newcastle, which of course is a much larger homogenous city these days.
The Toukley business community isn't the only body in whom Mr Sweeney is trying to sell his message of confidence. St George is busy preparing its banking application for submission to the Reserve Bank. It hopes this will instil enough confidence for the Reserve Bank to recommend the society be issued a banking licence.
We're obviously very confident about the outcome, but we must say that at the end it's up to the members to give us the final imprimatur.
If the vote is yes, the banking application will be lodged by the end of April. St George hopes for approval by June 30th.
In the past, Australian gymnasts have been taught under a 3-level system, but that's since been broken up into 9 levels. Rhythmic gymnastics, included in the last 3 Olympiads, is part of the new system, and that's what these young hopefuls have come to Taree to learn.
Rhythmic gymnastics is on the growth. Over the last 18 months, it's gradually developed more and more, and it doesn't require the expense of the artistic gymnastics apparatus, so lots more children are able to participate in this sport.
43 children from 7 to 17 are learning a wide range of skills, including the techniques of tumbling with a ball, rope, ribbon and hoop, as well as body conditioning and ballet steps. Coaches are also receiving intensive training.
It's a wonderful opportunity for the coaches to learn these new levels and so go back to their clubs with lots of information.
And it's information that's likely to be in demand. According to Doreen Raywood, there's a nationwide surge of interest in gymnastics.
Gymnastics is certainly growing, and I think the Australian women's team that did so well at the World Championships late last year has brought about a new influx of children wanting to do gymnastics.
The Maitland International Salon of Photography, founded in 1934, is the largest and longest running of its type in Australia. It's ranked as the 6th most prestigious exhibition on the world circuit, with photographers from 45 countries entered. There are glimpses of life from Hong Kong, Vietnam, Malaysia, Russia, Italy and Papua New Guinea. 500 prints, judged to be the best of more than 1,600 entries, are on show at Pender Place for the next 2 weeks. The prints can also be seen at the Maitland Show, along with evening viewings of slide entries.
The fight to preserve the 220-hectare site at Greenpoint has dominated local interest for the past 4 years. Today it took on a federal feel, with the leader of the Australian Democrats in town taking up the issue.
This 220 remaining hectares should be protected as a national park or as a passive recreation area.
The senator feels the issue has been dragging on for too long. In such instances, he says the federal government should step in. But Lake Macquarie Mayor Doug Carley believes a resolution between state and local government is only months away. Originally, council had agreed to buy 40 hectares of land from the owner for $1 million, earmarking it for parkland. State government was to match this, with the owner getting 40 hectares to develop. Now the circumstances have changed.
The owner of the property is no longer interested in developing the Greenpoint properties.
As a result, council has organised to meet with the Planning and Energy Minister Robert Webster within the next few weeks. Council intends to present a revised plan concerning the fate of Greenpoint. Council's proposal is to acquire the entire area, placing it in public ownership. But to do so, it needs the $1 million state government had originally committed. If this occurs, Alderman Carley believes the issue will be finally resolved within the next 6 months. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Bathers were back in the water minutes after the all clear was given on Newcastle's Bar Beach. The alarm was raised at about 10 o'clock this morning after a group of board riders reported movement in the water off Susan Gilmore Beach.
4 young kids saw the sharks and ran round from Susan Gilmore and told us.
Beach inspectors have every reason to believe that the same weather conditions which have drawn schools of sharks into the shoreline on Sydney's northern beaches are the same further along the coast. Regular netting is continuing off major beaches, but for those keen to escape the heat, the shark scare dramas have had little impact.
No, not really. Just heard a few shark alarms and that.
Are you worried about them?
Not really.